Welcome to the Positive Communication Show with your host, Matthew Cooper, where crisis meets communication. Join Matthew on the journey of skills, techniques, and wisdom on empowering your communication and enriching your relationships. Matthew has been a student and practitioner of self-help skills and crisis communications for over 20 years. He owns Positive Control Systems, a crisis communication and intervention business, and teaches these skills to parents, teenagers, and professionals. Here is your host, Matthew Cooper.
Those of you who are returning, awesome. Thank you once again for returning and being able to listen to another episode of my show. This should be interesting for all of you. A little bit of a background on me and what I do. When I mentioned my business, the Positive Control Systems business, I have a business working with the troubled youth programs in the United States right now. No, not all of them, though that would be nice. The Positive Control Systems is a crisis intervention and communication business that focuses on being able to teach these communication skills, both the de-escalation and the control skills, to the professionals in the troubled youth industry. In being able to work with them, I work with facilities in the they call the residential treatment area, as well as the drug and alcohol rehab, working with some facilities that are working with adults, as well as others working with younger children, eating disorders, and even facilities that are working in the wilderness industry if they have the wilderness rehabilitation training programs. So these programs are focusing on being able to help these youth who have had a variety of different disorders or challenges, being able to connect and communicate with their parents, to be able to get them back to a place where they're able to now take more control over their lives. Rather than being out of control, this is hopefully giving them some skills to be able to start taking control back. And what I also do with that type of communication, I also teach parents and work with parents, teaching them these different skills. For the most part, over the past 20 years this business has been running, we haven't focused at all on working with parents. I recently purchased, the past about 7-8 years ago, I purchased the business from the prior owner, my martial arts master, who developed the program. And we focused mainly on being able to work with the private, either private providers or even the government, working with the Utah State government and the Utah State, they call that the, glitching on the name really quick, juvenile justice system, thank you. So by being able to have these different ways of communicating with the facilities, that's great. It's wonderful. We've heard so much feedback from the different staff members saying, wow, this worked great for myself and my husband or my wife. I was able to talk to my kids better. Oh, this worked in every area of my life. And last year I thought, this needs to go out not just to the private sector. This needs to go out to the regular people, the regular public, the parents that need this the most, the ones that don't have the ability to send their children to one of these facilities, or even if you do have a child in the facility, being able to have a way to teach the parents to connect and communicate with their children so when they come home, they're better off. Because honestly, if you have the children learning all these new communication skills and they come home and the parents haven't changed, is it really going to change for that child? The answer is no. If you're going to change the environment, you're going to change how this child is acting and what's going on in their life, you have to make sure that you're changing not only the youth and what they're experiencing, helping them to grow, also the parents need to have that same connection or that same change or a similar change where they're growing, they're being able to do something different. If nothing changes, it will all stay the same, especially when the parents are the ones, from my perspective, that are responsible for how that child is acting. The children are taking their cues from their parents, and if they're not, then I think that parent needs to reevaluate what they're doing and improve, from my perspective, what they're doing. Now, I have been asked recently to be able to be a speaker at a nonprofit organization. It's called the Utah Valley Oasis, a community for good. I understand there's a number of these around the U.S., these Community for Good. And what they are is a community that is dedicated to social interaction, intellectual exploration, and humanitarian service, hoping to build a sense of community outside of religious affiliation. And what they've noticed is that all too often there is no support system, no group to support individuals who are not following a certain religious ideology. And with religion, it is oftentimes a place where people are able to find their tribe, their group, where they can connect, and they have so many people they can rely on in stressful times. Well, if someone leaves those groups, or if they choose to no longer follow those same paths, there's usually a challenge, a big challenge, to find a group of individuals that will be able to match or to provide that support to help them to feel like they are able to be part of something once again. It's one of the biggest challenges for many people that have left a religion, especially here in Utah. This is very, very common to have an individual leave the church, whichever church they're following, and then choosing to go somewhere else or not be a part of that. I've noticed a lot with the gay community. It's why the gay community is so strong out here in Utah. You'll have these individuals, either parents or children, who are, I don't want to use the word shunned, even though that is an accurate word. They have been turned away. There, we can use turned away. And in having that turn away from being able to embrace them and accept them and love them for who and how and what they are, they instead say, no, you are different than us in this way, and we don't accept that because of our beliefs. Well, that's what they're entitled to. We all have our own beliefs and our own paradigms of what we believe is correct and right for us. It doesn't always extend to everyone else because we are unique. Each one of us has our own beliefs and our own belief system of what is right and wrong. And so in not having someone to support you in your beliefs of what is right and wrong and be able to be there for you when you're going through some of these crises, the Community for Good, in this case the Utah Valley Oasis, in this Community for Good, they have been able to set up a group of individuals from a variety of different, either if they're atheist, agnostic, formerly part of a religion or a spiritual group. It just is good people getting together and making sure they're able to realize, you know what, there is life after you make this different choice and you choose a different path. And so I've been asked to be able to speak there at one of their events. I'll be speaking this next Sunday. And the topic I've chosen, because they like to focus on logic and reasoning rather than relying on faith or the revelation from their spiritual leaders, they want to be able to teach people to think for themselves, which is unfortunately a challenge. For those of you that have seen the play Inherit the Wind from back in the 1920s, when the school teacher was teaching the teachings of Charles Darwin and creation, or pardon me, it was evolution rather than creationism in school in Alabama. And it was in the state statutes that he could not do that, and then he was prosecuted for that. And it was interesting. I went and watched it last night with a lady friend of mine and my children, a couple of my children anyway, and it reminded me so much of how there is a disconnect between, if you will, science and religion, and being able to have people that can embrace both and understand both and still have a good heart inside, and others who say, no, this is how it is, this is only how it is, I will accept nothing else. And when they only focus on their religion and that belief system and nothing else comes into their minds as possible, that to me prevents people from being able to have that connection needed and necessary of outside of that community. If you do not believe as they do, you are an outcast, you are now a pariah, you are someone who cannot be a member and be connected with that larger community, that part of the tribe, if you will, and they're exiled. And in being exiled, they feel lost, they feel adrift, and they don't have a way of being able to connect with anyone. And so when I'm talking about all of this, what is leading up to is how the topic I'm going to be speaking with this Community of Good is talking about how communication is so important. And communication is not just the words you say. It's the things you do. All behavior, everything you do is communication. And if we are going to be able to take back some of that control in our lives and be able to connect with people around us and be able to have that ability to interact in a good way with all of our communities, to have either humanitarian efforts, service efforts, being able to even meet a person on the street. How do you do so? Well, you do so with communication. And that communication is going to be broken down into two different areas. You're going to have both the verbal and the nonverbal communication. And with good communication, when you're using the verbal and nonverbal properly, when you are using, I'm going to say good, I don't usually use the value judgment of good versus bad. However, in this case, it is going to be applicable. It is good communication when you're able to get the response that you are wanting, able to elicit and create that response that you're wanting with the other person when you're communicating with them. Bad communication will be that your message, what you're trying to communicate to this person, is not received appropriately and actually may be taken offensively because of the way you're presenting your message. Now, the reason why this is important to me and to all of us as we're communicating is because if you are communicating a message which is very important to you, you very strongly believe in it, and it means so much to you, when you communicate to another person this message, if you do so in a way that they can't understand from your perspective and that you can't connect with them, it can oftentimes be offensive. And we want to avoid that when we are seeking this connection with other people. Since all behavior is communication, I look at religions, groups, ideologies, political groups the same way. All of these, I look at them as a radio station, if you will. You can tune in to the radio station with their emotional, if you want to even go on the spiritual aspects of it, is like this wavelength, if you will, the frequency that would connect with your soul. It resonates with you. And when it resonates with you, you're going to find certain people who will connect with you and certain ones that won't. You're going to be able to tune in to some people and you're going to have a really clear connection. Others, it's going to be staticky. You're going to hear one word out of 3 or 4 or 5, and it's going to be so irritating to you, you're going to switch it off. That makes it really hard to connect with people. And until you have ability to do so in a consistent manner, it will be very challenging for you to be able to work with other people. Break is coming up in just a few moments, so stick around, and I will chat with you right after.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
You're listening to OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Matthew Cooper with the Positive Communication Show on OTR.FM. Alrighty, we were talking before the break about communication and how important it is and why having good communication skills are essential in being able to connect with people. I also use the analogy of radio stations and how we find those groups that we can tune into and have that connection with, where there's no static. We're not having the difficulty, from my standpoint, that difficulty of being able to resonate with the other person. And I'm sure you've all had this before. I mean, you're talking to somebody, especially somebody you've met recently or you've been introduced to, and they're like an old friend. They're like a person you've known for the past decade, even though you've only been talking to them for the past 5 minutes. And other people, it doesn't matter what you say to them. It's like it's bouncing off of a stainless steel plate in front of you. It's like, bang, you say a word. Whoa, bang, that's this ricocheting. What's going on? I'm saying this, and it's reflecting right off. I have had a couple of different people I've spoken with recently, and either it bounces off or they absorb it so much, and there's nothing they're giving back. No body language cues, no ability to see if they're interested in your message. It's like, wait a second. Why am I speaking to this person if they're not interested in what I have to offer and what I'm giving here? So making sure you can recognize these, we call them tells, in working with body nonviolent or nonverbal communication skills is really important with the body language. Recognizing these tells is incredibly important. Now, I mentioned the nonviolent communication. This is a wonderful book, Nonviolent Communication by, I believe his name is Marshall Rosenberg. The book was revolutionary for me in being able to understand how the way that we communicate, oftentimes here in the U.S., and the way that we were raised to communicate is more combative. It's more constantly attacking a person, being able to use words rather than our fists to be able to attack somebody. And in reading this book, I had to read, I think, 3 or 4 times before it really sunk in. Oh, there is a different way of communicating. Ha! It changed the way, when I adopted these teachings, it changed the way that I interacted with people, my children, my clients, friends, etc., to where I am now able to better connect with them rather than trying to essentially force them to listen to me and do what I want. Many of the ways that we communicate can be taken in a very aggressive manner when we want to share something with someone else and not listening or paying attention to them and what their needs are. And these are some of the things that the nonviolent communication, the book and the training this gentleman gives, Dr. Rosenberg, helped me tremendously. Now, when I mentioned the communication, we have both verbal and nonverbal. That is huge. I mean, some studies have even said that 93% of our communication is nonverbal. As strange as that may sound, 93%, only 7% are the words which we say. The rest of it can be the body language, the voice tones, the way that we're using our expressions, the way we're turning our body, our gestures with our hands, how close or how far away we're standing for someone, the small micro expressions on your face where you're raising an eyebrow or changing the tone and inflection of your voice. All of these things don't tie directly into the words you said, and they can change the message completely from, for example, hi to hi or hi. Each one of those is just one word, and yet you get a different message from each one of those words. Does that make sense? And so when you have these verbal and nonverbals you're using, skillfully using them, you're able to get your message across, the message which you're wanting to share with people across to them, so they can now be able to take the message which you're giving them and then formulate and create a message to send back to you. Part of the challenge in being able to communicate with people, and let me back up really quick. When I am learning to communicate, I do so in a way that some people, I have a really good friend of mine, she communicates naturally and very, intuitively. That's probably a good way of putting it. She is one of the best intuitive communicators I've ever met. Okay? She can talk to a person within moments, build rapport, build a connection, and she is off and running. Well, that's awesome. I don't have that same connection. I don't have that same ability that she does. Even though I don't have that, doesn't mean that I can't create it and build it within myself, which is what I've done. My way of communicating is more technical. It is more step by step. It is more logical, more rational, more reasonable. And when I was telling her about my idea, she loves the idea. She says, this means nothing to me. I can't use this because I don't think like that. I don't communicate like that, which I can greatly respect because I don't communicate the way she does. I don't think that way. And just as any skill that we learn it and use it over and over becomes second nature to us, these skills that I've learned, I don't oftentimes recognize the nuances that I'm using at the time until I observe them or analyze them later. And so what I'm going to be doing is breaking these down, which I have learned to intuitively over time. You call it intuitively once you've done it a few thousand times. I automatically, that's probably a better word, automatically use these skills in being able to connect with someone when I'm talking to them and communicating with them. Okay, I break it down in being able to separate the person I'm speaking with. First off, I check and see, all right, is this person a thinker or a feeler? A thinker is a person who's more logical and rational. They're going to be a person who is more interested in facts and figures. They're a person who is going to be more likely to be looking for logical, rational ideas that can be proven either empirically and scientifically, or being able to think through a problem with a problem-solving idea, and they're going to be able to have that method of communicating all the way through. Then there are those that are the feelers. These are the ones who have an emotional message that they are communicating with other people and receiving. They are the ones that are not only feeling it in their body, but they're also feeling it emotionally as well. And if I'm able to recognize that somebody is connecting on an emotional level, where they're able to now gain an emotional response from what I'm saying or what I'm communicating to them, okay, I can change my message to match them. When I mentioned being able to change your message, the reason why that's so important, I was trained as a linguist in the military many years ago. When we speak another person's language, one, it's easier for them to understand us. Two, we're able to connect with them in a way that you can't normally connect, or they're not used to connecting with people, because if people are not connecting with them speaking their language, kind of like if you speak Spanish and someone starts speaking Chinese to you, it's not going to help. No matter how loud or how much they gesture and you talk to you, you're still not going to get it. Okay? You have to slow down and figure out, okay, where is a common place we can move from. However, if you speak Spanish and the person starts speaking Spanish to you, all of a sudden there's a connection. Even if you are, say, from Mexico City, another person from over in Spain, they're speaking Castilian Spanish, you're still going to have enough of a connection. Oh, okay, we have a place we can start from now. So being able to have that kind of a connection is really, really important. That's why I like to be able to begin separating their communication style into, if you want to call it, these languages. Are they a thinker or are they a feeler? From there, I break it down even more. If you're familiar with NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, the two fathers of this were John Grinder and Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler has a lot of books out on the market. John Grinder has a few. Bandler is much more prolific that way. They talk about the primary learning modalities, which is the main, I call them learning languages, that people have, and how they interact with the world. The first one, which we're going to go over, is going to be auditory. It's how you're listening, hearing, and speaking to interact with someone. That's how they process information, so they want to talk it out. They want to be able to listen to someone so they can better understand what this person is saying to them. All right, that is an auditory individual. Then you have visual, which is going to be they're seeing a picture and they're wanting to use words to convey that picture to you, to the other person they have in the conversation. Let me back up a tiny bit with the auditory, with the sounds. If you are talking to somebody that is auditory, they will say, well, I just want you to listen to me. Sometimes I don't think that you even hear me. Well, listening and hearing are two of the prime ones. They're going to mention that quite a bit. It sounds like you just can't hear yourself think sometimes, or I just hear static is all I hear, or that kind of rings a bell. Is this making sense? This is a different way of interacting and listening to how they are processing internally. Pay attention to a person when they're speaking, and you'll be able to hear some of these auditory, visual, or kinesthetic, these different learning ways or learning languages we have of interacting, and you'll be surprised how quickly you can figure out how this other person is processing, and then how you can use those similar words to connect with them. Okay, I mentioned visual, so they're talking about a visual processor who's going to use certain words that connect there. For example, I see where you're coming from. Okay, that picture is clear to me. Well, what's your perspective on this? Look at it from where I'm standing. Okay, look, very visual, being able to give that visual perspective on being able to have that processing internally. The next is kinesthetic. Kinesthetic I break down to kinesthetic emotional and kinesthetic physical. That is being able to have a body-oriented communication style. So they're going to feel it. They're going to be able to connect on a physical level. They're going to want to walk in your shoes or for you to walk in their shoes. Okay, to work with you, to hold on, to grab a hold, and to get that deep gut feeling, or to be able to feel light and airy. Any of these feeling-based, the person you're speaking with has that. It makes a huge difference. Now, what's interesting, actually fascinating about each one of these is how people will learn from this. So if you're looking at a person who is an auditory learner, they're going to learn through lecture. And they're going to learn through listening to audio books or through auditory means. They're not going to want to read. That's more of a visual. They want to hear it. A visual person loves watching videos. They love watching movies. They're going to want to read and be able to gain their input through their visual modality in this case. Okay. Kinesthetic, they want to be walked through step by step. Show them. Okay. Don't just tell me about it. Don't just show me in front, but let me do it. Okay. Walk me through it. Help me step by step, and I will learn it. I'm a very visual person. And my master related a story to me of when he was going through college or high school. They were in an automotive shop, and this one gentleman that he was going through with him, one of his friends, was a very, very kinesthetic learner. And where my master was watching as the carburetor is being put together, he was like, "Oh, okay, cool, no worries. I can do this step by step by replaying it in my mind." That was huge. It made a big, big difference to him. His buddy couldn't. He was clueless. He had to be walked through, and he'd put his finger in each spot. Well, once he was done, though, he could put it together without even thinking because he was not connected the same way. Be back right after the break. It's coming up in just a few moments. We'll see you then.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of the Inspired Parenting radio show, where every week we bring you empowering information from the diverse fields of conscious parenting, education, neuroscience, consciousness, health, and metaphysics to support you in nurturing the best in your children. So if you're interested in understanding what shapes your children's minds, spirits, and hearts, join me every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and prepare to be inspired.
Matt Connerton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connerton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connerton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM radio network.
auditory, which is hearing, being able to listen to something, being able to focus on lecture. You can tell I'm very visual because I'm focusing on lecture. I will see you later. Those kinds of things. You can tell a person is visual very quick. If their auditory is, hey, let's chat sometime. Let's go out for a coffee and chat. Let's have a conversation. Okay, I want to go talk to you later. Hey, can you listen to me for a minute? These are all very auditory. Kinesthetic, hey, let's work together. I mean, we need to come unglued from this situation if we're going to be able to truly pull this back together. Or why can't you two just work it out? You keep on butting heads, and if you keep doing that, it's never going to be fixed. That's also very kinesthetic. Now we have two more, which aren't usually included. There are some people that are more connected in these ways, which would be gustatory, which would be taste, and olfactory, which is smell. Even though we do have those that do happen, they're not the primary ones which we oftentimes connect with. We're oftentimes finding that auditory, visual, and kinesthetic are the main ones people will, for the most part, connect with. Now, once we have the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, which I'm mentioning with these primary learning modalities, these in themselves are huge. They're tremendous for being able to connect with people. I'd like to propose a little bit of homework for you. Over the next week, just take a little time each day, and when a person is speaking to you, get out of your learning or your listening mode, which is very important. I know we need to make sure we're listening, and pay a little closer attention to what they're saying, the words they're saying, and which category they fit in, auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. Now, once you're able to figure out are they auditory, visual, or kinesthetic, you're going to be able to now get a better feel for how this person thinks. You're going to be able to have a better connection with them. You're going to be able to hear what it is they're truly saying rather than just the words that are on the surface. You're going to be able to go deeper and understand what's happening between the lines. All right? And when you can see it from that perspective, you're going to be having a very clear understanding of where it is that they're coming from in their communication style. Now, I don't know if you were listening to me as I was saying these things. I mixed in all three of them, auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, in that last statement. Okay? Having a very clear picture of what's going on, being able to work with them and be able to hear what it is truly their message they're saying is. Okay? A good communicator will use all three of them. And it's a natural. I found when I first learned about this, like, oh, wow, I do this naturally. I use auditory, visual, and kinesthetic when I'm speaking to others. When I get excited, though, when I really am talking about something I enjoy, it's very visual. When you bring emotions into it, they will oftentimes switch into more of their primary learning modality, their primary learning language. Especially when the troubled youth issue, which what I work with, when one of these youth are very escalated, they're upset, they're angry, frustrated, etc., you'll find that they will switch into this primary learning language of theirs, auditory, visual, or kinesthetic. They found about, I think, 70 to 80% of all the kids that are in these programs are kinesthetic. And that is an issue because they have not learned or have not been taught how to access their brains in such a way so they can now work with the school teachers. School teachers, in the way the schools are these days, are primarily geared towards the visual learners. Somewhat auditory, however, visual is the primary learning, not kinesthetic, not working through it step by step. And so many times these kinesthetic learners are then left behind. And if we want to be able to ensure that we're going to be connecting with them and helping them to understand what it is that's going on and we're not leaving any of them behind, I don't really agree with the idea of no child left behind. I think that we should encourage all children to learn at their best pace and not require anyone else to be drawn back by someone else and their learning differences. Not challenges or problems, it's just differences. Being able to have more of a customized learning program, I think, would be very, very beneficial. I know the Montessori schools are trying to do that. However, I don't know how effective it is. I've heard it's actually almost handicaps the children because even though they're able to use, and when I say handicaps them, I'm not meaning in a mental issue. I'm meaning that it actually, in the way that you'd look at a horse race where they'd have a handicap, they would be required to carry different weights or additional impediments to preventing them from being able to be on the same level as the other horses, so they're being held back essentially in certain ways. And the handicaps is if you teach someone this is the way they learn and that's the only way that you will interact with them, you prevent them from learning to adapt to other learning styles, which I feel is an injustice to that child. You should be taught how to not only use your own in the best way that it is for you to interact, and then also how to translate other languages and then be able to adapt that for yourself. So now it doesn't matter how this information is being passed to you, you can then learn how to teach yourself. You're responsible for how you're being taught because now you recognize they're teaching me from their perspective. It's not right or wrong, it's just their perspective. And now I can then teach myself by translating what they've said into my learning modality. I hope that makes sense. All right, another one. Oh, huge. This is great. This is something that changed the way that I parent drastically. Many years ago, once I was divorced, my guitar teacher's wife, I was chatting with her on Facebook about some of the great books that I've been reading. I was reading a book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray. And my guitar teacher's wife, her name's Melanie, she piped up and said, hey, that's a great book. I also had another book that even worked better for me. It's called The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. I'm like, oh, I'm always open for a good book. Oh, I love books. You should see the hundreds of books that I have. And I'm like, oh, wow, this guy does have a thing for books. So I said, great, I'll buy it. I went down and bought it that day at a bookstore of a friend of mine. I fell in love. Loved his material. This Dr. Gary Chapman had a gift of being able to communicate, and he found in over 30 years as a therapist, both marriage and family, working with youth, teenagers, etc., he found there's only really 5 ways that you can show love and receive love from somebody else. And with those 5 love languages, he devised ways that people can now understand that they're languages that go both ways. You're going to have oftentimes a spouse or a significant other, a partner, or even your children that will have a different learning language or a different love language than you do. And if you don't have a way of connecting with that person, no matter what you do, they're not going to feel loved by you. And Dr. Chapman goes on in his book. He has a number of books. He has both the regular one, the 5 love languages, and he has one for singles. He has one for teenagers, one for adolescents, one for children. And when you understand, after reading his books, he talks about this quite a bit, when you understand that if you don't get the love language you need, he calls it a love tank, you will fill the love tank with the main way that you receive love, and that you need that love to be able to feel loved in a relationship. And you'll keep it full by using these other types of love languages, all the rest of them, in addition to that main one. And an analogy that I came up with recently that really seemed to connect, really hit home, was nutrition. Because I've worked with nutrition for many years. My father's a chiropractic. I've also a licensed massage therapist myself, worked in Chinese medicine, and all these different fun things for myself. And nutrition is a very big part of how I like to make sure that I stay healthy, and everyone else should as well. And rather than relying on a pharmaceutical, which is artificial, you should look more like the Ayurvedics, where the food is your medicine. And the type of food you're eating and the minerals that comes from that, vitamins, etc., are going to be able to help your body to be working at its optimal level. Now, with that perspective, I thought, okay, well, so if I'm giving my own type of love language, my personal love language that works best for me is acts of service. If someone does something nice for me, oh, man, I feel so loved. I feel so connected with that person. I really, really appreciate the efforts they've taken. Well, if someone is not using my same love language, if someone is not using the love language which I feel that I need the most, okay, that's huge. That's very different, all right? If I'm trying to communicate with you and you are, for example, my love language being the acts of service, if you are just telling me all the time, oh, you are so awesome, you're great, you're this, you're that, nice, okay, thanks, but it's not going to really connect with me. I look at it like nutrition. So if I need more iron in my diet, and iron in this case is related to acts of service, okay? And somebody instead gives me these positive words of affirmation. And I'll go through these love languages so you understand a little more what I'm talking about. The words of affirmation, which could be like, say, their potassium, all right? They can give me as much potassium as I can stand until I'm poisoned with it, and it's not going to give me what I need. I need that iron. I need to have enough iron in my diet so that way the deficiency I have in the iron is first taken care of, and then giving me some potassium. Oh, that's just wonderful. I need that iron in my diet first. I need to have that acts of service to feel like I'm balanced first. Okay? And then you can go ahead and give me the words of affirmation, the other areas. I hope that makes sense, because that love language being filled is like a fuel. Okay? The main one that person needs is the main one that you need to use to help that person feel loved. And we oftentimes will give love in the way that we want to receive it. I have a daughter who loves giving gifts. Even if it's just a simple card that she's written, she wants to give that to you as a way of saying, here, I have made this for you. I was thinking about you. This made a huge impact for me, and I'm giving it to you. She wants to receive a gift back, saying, oh, thank you. Here's a gift that goes to you. I really appreciate this. I feel loved by you giving me a gift, and I want to return the favor. All right, that is part of that gift giving. Well, if gift giving is not one of your primary love languages, receiving and giving of gifts, it's just, it'll be nice. It's thank you. It's one of those, extra minerals. It's not the main one you need. Excuse me. It's not the one that's going to be taking care of your anemia, where you're having a lack of iron. However, it is still healthy and you need it, but it's not going to fill that void within you. So being able to understand what somebody's love language is going to allow you to fill that void, fill that need, and then you can use all the rest of them to keep them topped off, to keep them in that healthy, optimal condition. And so they found, this Dr. Chapman was mentioning that they found through research that young girls, the daughters of families, especially dads, that do not give them, for example, physical touch in an appropriate, positive way, they will then seek elsewhere to get that love. And sometimes in very unhealthy ways. We are now responsible for the love we're giving and not giving to our children. Be back in a few moments right after the break. We'll see you then.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
ways we now interact and learn with people: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. And right before the break, we're talking about the 5 love languages. These 5 love languages come from a book called The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And Dr. Chapman has been a therapist working with families, teenagers, etc., for quite a few years, I think over 30 years. I love this guy's work. Absolutely love it. And I have really learned quite a bit in working with him and talking with other people and sharing this information with parents and family members and learning, okay, how is it you're connecting with these people around you? How are you able to understand how they need to feel love? Because love it's a requirement. It's like having a nutrient in your life. If you don't have this nutrient, you're deficient, you're going to have issues. What happens if you have a deficiency in vitamin C? Okay, your hair will fall out. Your teeth will get loose in your gums. That's an issue, all right? Vitamin C deficiency. Well, what happens when we have a love deficiency? Well, our relationship's going to fall apart. We're not going to be able to connect with this person. We're not going to be able to feel love no matter what they do. They think they're doing plenty, and we don't think they're doing enough. We think that they're actually ignoring us. As I mentioned close to the break, that there were some studies done that Dr. Chapman was mentioning about these girls, these daughters of these family members, who were leaving their home, searching for love from other places because they're not getting what they need at home. And that can be physical touch. It can be listening, talking. It can be a variety of things, giving of gifts. It's a variety of them. And I'll go over the love languages here in just a second so you understand more of what I'm talking about. Because if we don't have this understanding, we don't have this connection, that takes a lot out of our arsenal, or our toolbox, if you will, of being able to now have a way of working with our family members, our loved ones, to build the strongest relationship possible. But if we don't have these skills and these tools, we're going to be lost. We really are. And this is part of what I realized after I got divorced, that my ex-wife and I have completely different love languages. I was showing her love in the ways that I thought that she wanted to feel love, and she was doing the same with me, and yet neither one of us felt we were being loved. So this is really important that everyone should understand this when they're having these relationships. All right, the 5 love languages. I'll just go over them briefly, and then I will go and break them down in just a few moments. So the first one are words of affirmation. Second one is giving of gifts. Third one's acts of service. Number 4 is quality time. And number 5 is physical touch. Okay? Words of affirmation, the first one. Words of affirmation is broken up into 3 main areas. Now, when we're using these words of affirmation, they are words that we use to be able to give praise to somebody else. Okay? To tell them, great job. The first one of the part of the group is the words of encouragement. Words of encouragement are, hey, great job. You're doing fantastic. Hey, awesome. Thank you so much. You're doing awesome. You've done a great job today in this, this, and this. You can make that more specific, and that can mean a lot more if you're more specific versus more vague. Hey, I am so happy to see you today. Why? I'm so happy to see you today because I've been wanting to talk to you all week. I've been needing to ask you this certain question. All of a sudden now you're taking it from a big, broad statement into a much more focused one. Okay, so you're having, if you want to go for the Japanese, or Japanese but also Chinese, so the Asian idea of the yin-yang, the yang being more of the I want to say hard, male, masculine energy type idea, and the yin being the dark, more soft, more feminine idea. So being able to have a very broad statement would be very masculine, very yang, and the yin be much more focused in on what exactly that person is needing or wanting to be able to have that deeper connection. After you have the words of encouragement, you have words of praise. So not only is, you're doing a great job today, keep it up. Words of praise would be, you've done so well this last week. You have worked so hard. I just wanted to say, thank you. You are awesome. Good job. Okay, encouraging is one thing, but then giving praise, specific praise on what a person has been doing, makes a huge difference. And when you understand that difference between encouragement and praise, even those are similar enough. You encourage them to do better, that's great. You're praising them. Now look a little bit deeper and say, is this a very broad definition, or is this a very focused definition? I was having a conversation recently with a friend of mine, and she and I were talking about this because I found that with myself, when someone gives me a compliment, unless it's focused, I tend to deflect it. I didn't realize this before. This was great feedback from her. Because if someone says, "Oh, you're so awesome," I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. What do you want? It's a subconscious response inside of me that's saying, "Oh, they're trying to get something. What do they want from me?" I have not received praise in the past just for praise's sake. I have only received praise in the past as a way of getting closer to me so they can now take advantage of me in some way. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone's like this, but this is something that I've discovered for myself. Like, holy cow, I never realized that I was that jaded or that sensitive. If someone gives me a compliment, that I will deflect it because I'm immediately on a subconscious level, not conscious, but a subconscious level, I am suspicious for what they're saying because I didn't grow up in an environment of receiving these verbal words of affirmation. Okay? And so if someone gives me a specific compliment instead, for example, this friend of mine I worked on, I'm a body worker, licensed massage therapist, do Chinese medicine, etc. I was working on her back and was able to really do some great work for her. And she said, "Thank you so much. You did a great job. My back feels so much better." Boom. I immediately accepted that praise because it was specific and it made a big impact. I'm like, "You're very welcome. Happy to help." It resonated with me in a different way. So being broad versus being specific, some people want that broad amount of praise because that is their love language. They grew up with it. They need that. If you didn't grow up with it, you have to learn that language. You have to learn to speak their language now to help that person. And if you have a relationship, a friendship, their partner, or whatever, you need to make sure you're using that so that they feel that they are appreciated too. I hope this is making sense to you. This was, for me, and I've been studying this for years, this was a revelation, like, pow, whoa. I never realized that little nuance, that little change for myself. And it was huge in being able to help me understand how I am responding to other people and their praise to me. Okay? And the last one of these three is a kind words. So we have the words of encouragement, words of praise, and then kind words. Next one, okay, and then kind words is pretty self-explanatory. And then we have the next one, giving of gifts. Now, giving of gifts, it is not that complicated, all right? Giving a gift to somebody, it needs to be something that they're not expecting, they're not taking for granted. This is something you're giving out of your heart and not expecting ever to receive anything back. If you're expecting something back, that is not a gift. It is now a bribe or it's an obligation, and you do not want to have that, okay? Acts of service, I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker now because we only have a few minutes left before the end of the hour. Acts of service, my personal favorite, is doing something for someone else. Once again, like a gift, you are not expecting anything back. And the words of affirmation, this is interesting as well. All of these, if you give something to this person, don't expect to receive it the same way back. You very well may receive it back. And yet, in learning to speak that language, it can feel kind of clunky. It doesn't feel comfortable at first. That's how it was for me when I'm giving a person a compliment back after they've given me a compliment. It doesn't feel natural. It's still kind of, I don't really recognize that. I had a young lady today. She was walking her dog up the stairs, and she said, "Oh, your dog is so cute." So I was bringing mine back up to my apartment, and I had to pause. And I said, "Oh, thank you. I can say that." But I'm like, okay, your dog's really cute too. It was a cute little dog. Hers is a cute dog too. However, I had that disconnect where I'm now having to think about it. I haven't given those verbal compliments that way before, so I'm going to have to work on those until they feel more natural. Anyway, going back to acts of service, this is what I personally feel loved by someone doing something for me, cooking a meal, doing my laundry, folding it. These are things I remember from when I was married. Being able to have someone rub my shoulders, okay, give me a foot rub, something like that. Those are things that, like, oh, thank you so much for doing that for me. These are kinds of things, acts of service that we can do for other people and also receive ourselves to feel loved. Next is quality time. Quality time is often associated with not just being in their room, the physical presence. It's also associated many times with conversation, face-to-face time. When you can have that connection with the person, looking in their face and being able to have them talk and having a good conversation. That is oftentimes that quality time. Or even being there working together. I remember that my ex-wife and I, she loved to have me work in the kitchen and make dinner with her because I'm spending quality time with her. Well, her making dinner for me was an act of service, and so I was spending quality time with her, which is nice, but I didn't feel like I was being loved because I didn't get my act of service. Does that make sense? So we were having two different, dissimilar needs, but doing the same action, and one was feeling loved and one wasn't. Physical touch being the last one. With physical touch, that is being able to have positive, quality physical touch. I mean, you're being able to, for example, give a hug, a back scratch, being able to, a good solid handshake, knuckle bump, whatever. Being able to have that physical touch in such a way that that person feels loved. Not feeling taken advantage of, not feeling as if it is inappropriate. We have to make sure that we're using our love or physical touch in a very appropriate way to make sure that person is not feeling taken advantage of. I hope this makes sense. There's so much information here. I actually do workshops with this information because it is so needed, and it's almost unknown out there. If you don't believe me, go check it out. Look and try and search for this stuff. It's really hard to find it. And the reason why I'm teaching is because for me, I realize that I have to become the change that I want to see in the world. If I'm not being that change, how can I expect anyone else to make that move first? I can't. So I need to do it. I encourage all of you to do the same thing. Make that change yourself. Do it. And I'll catch you next week.